Out of nowhere, a bizarre notice popped up in our building's WhatsApp group chat. Hey everyone, we didn't pay our internet bill this month because we don't want our baby getting addicted to screens. However, we occasionally need it for work and entertainment. Therefore, we expect our neighbors to share their connection. Our online hours will be from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. daily. During this time, please do not use your own Wi-Fi so we can enjoy maximum speed. I will be adding the neighbors on our floor. Please accept my request immediately and send over your password. The message was sent by the tenants in apartment 9A. I lived in apartment 9C. A second later, a friend request popped up on my phone. I swiped decline without hesitating and replied in the group, "Did you misplace your manners when typing that, or did you just double-air your audacity? You've got some nerve." Within minutes, my doorbell rang like crazy. Through the security camera, I saw a man and a woman standing there looking ready to start a riot. The woman had her hands on her hips, practically screaming at the camera. "Open up. What on earth is your big problem? Hurry up. My husband has a document to edit, and you're the only one on this floor who isn't asleep." Wow, a match made in heaven. Two deeply confused folks. I tapped the intercom and let out a sarcastic draw. "Hey, why don't you guys just come on in? I can slice up some fresh fruit, brew a nice pot of tea, turn on the AC, and let him work on my couch. Would you like a foot massage with that, too?" The husband, looking clueless, beamed and whispered to his wife, "Wait, seriously? That actually sounds awesome." The wife was slightly smarter. She patted him hard on the back of his head. "Are you that silly?" She's being sarcastic. She turned back to my door and started pounding on it again. "Come on, just give us the Wi-Fi password. He has to finish editing by 11 p.m. so he can get his 8 hours of sleep. If he doesn't, it's bad for his immune system." Their sheer unadulterated entitlement actually made me laugh. While pulling up my phone to text the local police dispatch, I kept them talking through the intercom. Fine. Get your phone ready." In the camera monitor, I saw the husband eagerly pull out his phone, navigating to the Wi-Fi settings. "The password is 9A is silly." The husband tapped his screen 6 times, frowned, and muttered, "Wait, it says incorrect password." His wife patted him again. "She's calling us silly, you goofball. The internet was right. A lot of people are severely lacking in tact, but because they can feed themselves, society treats them like normal citizens." These two were prime examples. The woman wouldn't give up, continuing to rattle my doorknob. I didn't get it. Why was her husband's job my responsibility? Was his salary going into my bank account? Just then, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. The police had arrived. The woman spun around, looking at the officers like they were her personal saviors. "Oh, thank goodness, officers. You're finally here." The officer blinked, confused. "Did you call us?" I threw open my door. "No, I did." I laid out the entire story, adding just enough dramatic flair to make them look as ridiculous as possible. The 2 officers and the building security guard who followed them up stood there in stunned silence. But Brenda, the wife, immediately put on a victim act. "We're neighbors. What's wrong with helping each other out?" Not only is she cold-hearted, but she also insulted us. "I'm pretty sure verbal harassment is a crime. You should arrest her." The officer looked like he was physically restraining himself from rolling his eyes. He said sternly, "Ma'am, it's 10 o'clock at night. Banging on doors and screaming in the hallway is disturbing the peace. As for the internet, she has absolutely no obligation to share her private network with you. I suggest you call a provider and set up your own service tomorrow." Then he turned to me with a tired sigh. "Look, miss, just to resolve this for tonight so everyone can get some sleep. Would you mind letting them use it just this once? You can change your password first thing tomorrow morning." I didn't want to, but I didn't want to make things difficult for the cops either. I reluctantly rattled off a temporary password. "And you too," the officer warned the couple. "Do not knock on her door again." Once the police and the guard left, I slammed my door shut and locked it. Through the thin walls, I could faintly hear Brenda giggling. "Yay! Hurry up and do your work, babe. I'm going to stream that show I missed earlier." Streaming at the office during lunch just wasn't the same. Her husband, Greg, mumbled something about keeping the volume down so it wouldn't be too noisy. Brenda clearly ignored him. 5 minutes later, my router app notified me that 4 new devices had connected. 2 iPhones, a smart TV, and a MacBook. A wicked idea popped into my head. I opened my casting app, synced up to their smart TV, and cast a very loud and spooky clip from a ghost movie at maximum volume. I let it play for 3 seconds, cut the feed, and repeated it. A muffled, high-pitched shriek echoed from apartment 9A. Satisfied, I changed my Wi-Fi password to something entirely different and went to bed with a huge smile on my face. The next morning, I ran into Maya, the tenant from apartment 9B, right outside the elevator. She was about my age. When our eyes met, she immediately asked, "Hey, did that demanding couple try to add you on WhatsApp too?" I gave her a solemn, heavy nod. She gave me a look of pure sympathy. It was clear she hadn't been spared either. Maya introduced herself and explained she worked rotating shifts at a local hospital. She had been on the night shift last night, which was the only reason she had escaped the initial drama. "My friend is a teacher at the elementary school down the street," Maya whispered, leaning in. "She actually has their kid in her class. Apparently, those parents are a teacher's absolute worst nightmare." She pulled out her phone and showed me a few leaked screenshots from the parent-teacher portal. The husband was Greg Thompson. The wife was Brenda, and their kid was named Braxton Hunter. Yes, double-barreled and incredibly particular. The messages Brenda sent to the teacher were gold. "Miss Kelly, Braxton Hunter's pee was a bit dark when he got home today. Please personally monitor his water intake during recess." Attached was a high-resolution photo of a child's toilet bowl. "Ms. Kelly, why does Braxton Hunter's textbook have a bent page? Did you not inspect it before handing it out? This feels like a targeted microaggression against my son. Ms. Kelly, Braxton Hunter doesn't like cooked onions. Please instruct the school cafeteria to swap out onions for garlic when preparing his lunch." My skin crawled, just reading them. Since the Thompsons had just moved in, our peaceful hallway was officially a drama zone. While we were whispering, a sharp nasal voice cut through the air. "Hey 9C, did you do that on purpose last night?" It was the dark urine mom herself, Brenda. "So what if I did?" I rolled my eyes. Her face contorted in anger for a second before she snapped her head toward Maya. "And you 9B, why haven't you accepted my request? Send me your Wi-Fi password. I heard you work nights, so you're not even using your internet then anyway. It's just going to waste." Maya didn't hold back. "Well, your apartment is empty during the day, right? I need a place to sleep after my shift. Why don't you let me sleep in your bed? Otherwise, it's just going to waste." Brenda's eyes popped. "Look at you two. Not a single ounce of ladylike grace, spitting negativity like that. You both look so thin and sickly anyway. No wonder you don't have the blessing of raising a strong son." I slapped my hands on my hips. "Wow. Did you gargle with sour milk this morning? Or is that just your usual breath?" Just then, Braxton Hunter waddled out of their apartment. He was exactly what I expected, a round, sticky kid holding a half-eaten hot dog. After a few steps, he dropped it right onto the dusty carpet of the hallway. Brenda rushed over, picked up the fuzzy hot dog, blew on it twice, and shoved it right back into her son's mouth. Maya and I stared, absolutely horrified. Fortunately, Brenda was running late to drop her golden boy off at school, so she couldn't linger. As the elevator doors closed, Maya turned to me. "So, what do we do?" "She's definitely going to come back for the password. We can't keep doing this forever. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it." But that bridge arrived much sooner than expected. That very evening, Brenda knocked again. This time, she wasn't asking for the Wi-Fi password. She wanted my door lock code. She claimed they had relatives visiting from out of state, and their apartment was too crowded. She wanted Maya and me to share our apartments. "It's simple," Brenda said, her tone incredibly generous. "Since you work during the day, my relatives can stay at your place. And since Maya works at night, they can sleep at her place. We aren't asking for free either. We'll pay you $20 a day, $20 whole dollars." Wow, how would I ever spend such a fortune? "Get lost before I call the cops again," I said coldly. But Brenda chose to play dirty. "If you won't let them stay, I'll just have them set up air mattresses right here in the hallway. Don't complain when they're blocking your door. To prove her point, she immediately dragged out several trash bags, dirty laundry hampers, and a plastic bucket, placing them right outside my doorway. She had declared war. If she wanted to bring guests, I could play that game, too. Coincidentally, my mom had called me earlier crying about my grandma. Ever since my grandfather passed away, my notoriously hot-tempered grandma had been living with my parents. The mother-in-law tension was through the roof. I dialed my mom back immediately. Mom, pack Grandma's bags. Send her to Chicago. She's 75 and she is ready to rumble. My Grandma Evelyn was a force of nature. In our family, we called her Grandma on super mode. My Grandma Evelyn had survived 3 landlords, 2 recessions, 1 cheating husband, and a neighborhood association that tried to find her for growing tomatoes on her fire escape. She was 5 feet 1 inch, weighed approximately 98 pounds, soaking wet, and had the negotiating style of a mob enforcer. Tell her I'm bringing my casserole dish, Grandma Evelyn said when I called. The heavy one. Grandma, you don't need to bring a casserole dish. Evelyn, my mother hissed in the background. Do not bring the casserole dish. I'm bringing it, she said simply, and hung up. She arrived the next afternoon by taxi. Casserole dish wrapped in a kitchen towel tucked under one arm, rolling suitcase in the other, and the expression of a woman who had been waiting her entire retirement for a worthy adversary. I'd barely gotten her settled on my couch when my phone buzzed. Building WhatsApp group. 9A, attention neighbors. We have family visiting. As a courtesy, could everyone please avoid the laundry room between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Our guests need several loads and the machines should be fully available. Also, the gym equipment on the 3rd floor should be kept free during morning hours as our uncle has a specific routine and doesn't like waiting, Maya replied before I could. Sure. And could you make sure your family stops breathing the hallway air between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m.? I need to sleep and their oxygen consumption is keeping me up. 3 other residents sent laughing emojis. Nobody agreed to the laundry room request. I read the message aloud to Grandma Evelyn. She set down her tea, picked it back up, and said without looking at me, How many of them are there? No idea. Are they loud? I thought about Brenda's shriek carrying through the walls at full volume. Moderately. Grandma Evelyn nodded slowly, the way a general nod when receiving a field report. All right. By that evening, the hallway outside my door had transformed. Brenda had followed through on her threat. Plastic storage bins, a deflated air mattress, 2 laundry hampers, and what appeared to be a child's bicycle had been arranged in a loose perimeter around my doorway. It wasn't technically blocking the entrance. She was just smart enough to avoid a clear lease violation, but it was ugly, deliberate, and it narrowed the walkway to something you had to turn sideways to navigate. I took photographs and emailed them to building management with a short, polite note flagging the items as a potential fire hazard and requesting clarification on hallway storage policy. Building management replied with a PDF of the relevant lease clause. I printed it, slipped it into a plastic sleeve, and taped it to the wall beside Brenda's garbage arrangement. 30 minutes later, I heard her rip it down. An hour after that, she knocked on my door. I didn't open it. I spoke through the intercom with the camera running. Can I help you? That stuff in the hallway is decorative, Brenda said, chin up. Completely serious. I'm curating the shared space. This building is so sterile. I'm adding character. The fire marshal calls it a hazard. Building management calls it a lease violation. I call it Tuesday. I paused. Have a lovely evening, Brenda. Don't you close that. I closed the channel. From the kitchen, Grandma Evelyn called out without looking up from her crossword. She sounds stupid. She's world-class, I confirmed. The escalation I hadn't anticipated came from a direction I should have seen coming. Braxton Hunter. The next morning, I was heading out when I found my welcome mat missing. Not moved, gone. I stood in the doorway staring at the empty floor for a full 5 seconds. I pulled up the hallway camera on my phone. The footage from 7:43 a.m. was perfectly clear. Braxton Hunter, hot dog nowhere in sight for once, waddled up to my doorway, picked up the mat with both pudgy hands, and hauled it back into apartment 9A with the focused determination of a man on a mission. I screenshotted the timestamp, emailed it to myself, and knocked on 9A. Brenda answered with the expression of someone who had been expecting this conversation and had already prepared her defense. "My welcome, Matt," I said pleasantly. "Braxton Hunter needed it for a project," she said. "A project. He's very creative. We encourage self-expression. I encourage the return of my property within the next 3 minutes, or the next conversation happens with building security on the line." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is? You have no community spirit. We are neighbors. We are supposed to support each other. In some cultures, sharing is considered a virtue. In most legal systems, taking someone else's belongings is considered theft. The cultures tend to frown on that one too." I kept my voice completely mild. "My mat, please." She produced it from behind the door with the wounded dignity of someone performing an enormous personal favor. I took it, thanked her with total sincerity, and walked back to my apartment. Inside, I relayed the story to Grandma Evelyn. She put down her crossword. "The child took your mat. The child took my mat." She was quiet for a moment. "Then I'm going to make cookies." I looked at her. "Grandma, for the building," she said, already moving toward the kitchen. "I'm going to make cookies for the building." I had known Grandma Evelyn for my entire life. I knew what her cookies meant, and it had absolutely nothing to do with community spirit. She was opening a front. I texted Maya. "Are you awake? We're having a planning session. Grandma Evelyn is involved." Maya replied in under a minute. "I'm in. Give me 10. By the time Maya knocked, Grandma Evelyn had already organized my kitchen counter into what I can only describe as a command center. Notepad, pen, cup of tea, cookie dough underway. She had also somehow already absorbed the full history. The Wi-Fi message, the police, the jump scare, the hallway arrangement, the mat. I still don't know exactly when I'd told her all of it, but she had it. Maya sat down, accepted the tea. Grandma Evelyn slid toward her without being asked and said, "She knocked on my door at 5:30 this morning." I had just gotten off my shift. Grandma Evelyn wrote something on her notepad. "What are you writing?" Maya asked. "A list," Grandma Evelyn said. "Of what?" She looked up with the particular expression I had grown up being slightly afraid of. "Of everything she wants. The Wi-Fi, the mat, the laundry room, the gym, the apartment for her relatives." She tapped the pen against the pad. "People like this don't stop. They find out what you'll give, and they come back for the next thing. So, we don't fight each fight separately." She looked between us. "We end all of them at once." Maya glanced at me. I looked at the notepad. Outside, I could faintly hear Brenda through the wall, telling Greg he needed to fix the Wi-Fi situation himself if he was so bothered by it, and Greg quietly agreeing to everything she said. "Okay," I said. "Walk us through it." Grandma Evelyn uncapped her pen. And for the next 2 hours, over tea and a batch of cookies that smelled absolutely incredible, we built the most methodical, airtight, completely legal plan I had ever been a part of in my life. By the end of it, I understood something I hadn't fully appreciated before. Brenda had made a critical miscalculation from the very beginning. She had walked into a building full of people she assumed would be too polite, too tired, or too conflict-averse to push back. And she had chosen the one hallway that happened to contain a night shift nurse with iron nerves, a former top salesperson with a paper trail habit, and a 75-year-old woman who had been waiting years for exactly this kind of fight. She had knocked on every wrong door. Grandma Evelyn started with the cookies, not as a metaphor. Literally, she baked 4 dozen snickerdoodles, arranged them on 2 plates lined with parchment paper, and announced she was going to introduce herself to the building. "Grandma, we live on the 9th floor. There are 42 units. "I know," she said, putting on her cardigan. "You're not going to all 42 units. I'm going to the ones that matter," she said, and walked out. Maya and I looked at each other. Then we followed her. What happened next took about 90 minutes and can only be described as a coalition forming in real time. Grandma Evelyn knocked on 11 doors on floors 8 through 10. At each one, she introduced herself as my grandmother visiting from out of town, offered a cookie, and within about 45 seconds had somehow gotten the neighbor talking about Brenda. She didn't ask leading questions. She didn't need to. She just listened with the focused attention of someone who genuinely wanted to understand the full picture. And people talked. The couple in 8B had received the same WhatsApp message and a follow-up voice note when they didn't respond. The man in 10A said Brenda had knocked on his door asking to borrow his parking spot for her relatives, offering $15 a day. The woman in 8D told us with visible agitation that Braxton Hunter had ridden his bicycle into her delivery package twice in the same week, and Brenda had explained that children are naturally curious and perhaps she shouldn't leave packages in the hallway if she didn't want them interacted with. By the time we got back to my apartment, the plates were empty and Grandma Evelyn had 7 phone numbers in her notepad. Now, she said, sitting back down at my kitchen counter. The second part, Maya had been saving something. She pulled out her phone and opened her messages, scrolling to a thread with her friend, the teacher. I texted her last night after our meeting. Her name is Kelly. She's been dealing with Brenda's messages for 8 months. Maya turned the screen toward us. She wants to help. What kind of help? I asked. She said Brenda recently submitted a formal complaint to the school principal claiming Kelly was discriminating against Braxton Hunter by not giving him a solo part in the spring concert. Maya paused for effect. Braxton Hunter cannot carry a tune. Kelly has a recording. Grandma Evelyn nodded approvingly. Keep going. Kelly said the school has a whole file on Brenda. 3 formal complaints filed against her by other parents in the last semester alone. One of them went to the district. Maya set the phone down. The school can't share it officially, but Kelly can tell us what's in it, and we can use that to understand exactly what we're dealing with. What we were dealing with, it turned out, was a pattern. Brenda didn't just do this to neighbors. She did it to teachers, to other parents, and to the pediatrician she had reportedly called 9 times in a single month. To the dry cleaner she had accused of intentionally mispressing Greg's color, to the building super at their previous apartment, whom she had left a 1-star review for after he failed to fix a squeaky hinge within 4 hours of being notified. Brenda was not a difficult neighbor. Brenda was a lifestyle. She's done this everywhere, I said. Which means, Grandma Evelyn said, she's learned that it works everywhere until it doesn't. She opened her notepad to a fresh page and wrote 3 headings: building management, documentation, the group chat. The building management piece was mine. I had already submitted the hallway photos, but that was reactive, responding to what she'd done. What Grandma Evelyn wanted was proactive, a formal documented pattern of behavior submitted in writing before anything escalated further so that whatever happened next, management already had context. I spent that afternoon drafting it. Not a rant, a timeline. Dated entries, each one a single factual paragraph. The WhatsApp message with screenshot, the 10 p.m. door pounding with the police report number. The temporary password given under pressure, the 4 unauthorized devices connected within minutes, the hallway arrangement with photos and the lease clause reference, the welcome mat incident with the camera timestamp. I attached everything. I also CC'd building security and the property management company's regional office, which I found with about 4 minutes of searching. Maya handled the documentation side. She was methodical about it in the way nurses are methodical, careful, precise, nothing left to interpretation. She had screenshots of every WhatsApp message Brenda had sent to the group. She compiled her own incident log covering the 5:30 a.m. knock and 2 previous interactions she hadn't mentioned to me yet, including one where Brenda had told her that women who work night shifts age faster and she should consider a different career for her skin's sake. Grandma Evelyn handled the group chat. She had Maya add her to the building WhatsApp group that afternoon. For 2 hours, she said nothing. She read every message in the history going back 6 months, moving her reading glasses up and down her nose, scrolling slowly. Then she introduced herself in the group with a single message. Hello everyone, I'm Evelyn visiting my granddaughter in 9C. She's told me so much about this building. I baked some snickerdoodles today and dropped them off on a few floors. Hope you enjoyed them. Looking forward to meeting everyone properly. 11 people replied within the hour. 3 of them were neighbors Grandma Evelyn had already met in person. The rest were new people who had received Brenda's original message and said nothing in the chat, but apparently had plenty stored up because they introduced themselves to Grandma Evelyn with the warmth of people who had been waiting for someone to talk to. Brenda did not reply. That evening, Kelly, the teacher, sent Maya a voice message. Mia put it on speaker at my kitchen table, the 3 of us listening. So, I probably shouldn't say this, but I think you should know. Brenda and Greg are 2 months behind on their HOA fees at their last building. They moved because management was about to take them to small claims. I know because one of the other parents in my class lives there and mentioned it when she found out where the Thompsons had moved. Also, and this is just between us, the relatives visiting. According to Greg's own brother, who I guess is one of them, they're not visiting. They're looking for a place to stay permanently. Brenda's been telling people you guys offered your apartments. The voice message ended. The 3 of us sat in silence for a moment. Then Grandma Evelyn picked up her pen and wrote one more line at the bottom of her notepad, underlined twice. I leaned over to read it. They aren't guests. They're moving in. I sat back and thought about the air mattresses in the hallway, the laundry hampers, the storage bins arranged outside my door, like a perimeter being slowly established. I thought about the way Brenda had said, we aren't asking for free with the confidence of someone who had already decided the answer was yes. She hadn't been asking for a favor. She had been testing how much resistance we'd put up before we gave in. And I thought suddenly about that first message in the building group. We expect our neighbors to share their connection. Not asking, expecting. The whole thing had been structured that way from the very beginning. Not as a request between equals, but as a notification, a policy announcement, as if the building's resources, and by extension ours, were already hers to allocate. She had introduced herself to us by telling us what we owed her. And now, 2 days later, she was quietly attempting to move strangers into our apartments. I looked at Grandma Evelyn's notepad at the 3 headings, the phone numbers, the timeline I'd drafted, the evidence Maya had compiled, the message from Kelly, and the 7 neighbors who had taken a cookie from a 75-year-old woman and immediately told her everything. Brenda thought she was the one running a strategy. She had no idea we had already started ours. Building management responded the next morning. Not a form reply. An actual email from the property manager, a woman named Diane, who said she had reviewed the documentation, cross-referenced the incident log with the police report on file, and was scheduling a formal inspection of the 9th floor hallway that afternoon to assess the lease violation. She also noted that the unauthorized device connections to a shared temporary password constituted a term of service issue with the building's network provider and would be flagged accordingly. She ended with, "Thank you for the thoroughness of your submission. This is exactly the kind of documentation that allows us to act quickly." I forwarded it to Maya without comment. Maya replied with a single emoji, a cookie. I laughed for the first time in days. The inspection happened at 2 o'clock. Diane arrived with a clipboard and a building engineer. I watched through my door camera as they photographed Brenda's hallway arrangement from 3 angles. Brenda came out of 9A approximately 45 seconds into this process, still in her robe, and immediately adopted the tone of someone who had been gravely wronged. I was told this building encourages residents to personalize their living spaces, she said. Diane did not look up from her clipboard. Shared hallways are not personal living spaces. These items are in violation of Section 4.3 of your lease agreement. They need to be removed by end of business today, or we'll have them removed at your expense. This is harassment, Brenda said. Someone clearly has it out for me. I've only been here 2 weeks. The items need to be gone by 5 p.m., Diane said. Then she knocked on my door. I opened it and thanked her for coming. She handed me a card and said quietly, "I've also flagged the guest situation. If the individuals currently staying in 9A are not registered guests on the lease, they cannot remain in the unit beyond 72 hours per occupancy policy. I'll be reaching out to the tenant in 9A separately." Behind her, I could see Brenda standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, watching this exchange with an expression that had cycled through indignation and landed somewhere closer to calculation. I thanked Diane again and closed my door. Grandma Evelyn made her move in the group chat at 4 p.m. She had been quiet in the group all day, just present, occasionally reacting to other messages with a thumbs up or a short, friendly response. She had become in less than 24 hours the building's most liked new presence. People were tagging her and things. Someone from the 6th floor had asked for her snickerdoodle recipe. At 4 p.m., she posted, "Quick question for anyone who knows. Does the building have a process for flagging concerns about shared spaces or lease compliance? Asking for a friend who doesn't want to make trouble but has noticed a few things." 14 people replied. Several of them shared their own experiences in detail. The man from 10A posted about the parking spot request. The woman from 8D described the bicycle and package incident. 2 people from floors we hadn't even visited mentioned the WhatsApp laundry room demand. Someone from the 7th floor said their doorbell had been rung at 11:30 p.m. by a woman who described herself as their neighbor from the 9th floor and asked to borrow their extension cord. I had not known about the 7th floor. By the time Brenda posted her response, "This is a targeted smear campaign, and I will be consulting with my attorney." She was 22 replies behind, and the conversation had already moved on. The man from 10A replied to Brenda's message with "Building management already came today. It wasn't a smear campaign. And it was a clipboard." 5 people liked it. Greg knocked on my door at 6 o'clock. Not Brenda. Greg. He stood in the hallway without the bicycle or the laundry hampers. Brenda had removed everything by 4:50, 10 minutes before the deadline. And he looked like a man who had recently been made aware that his life contained structural problems he had not previously acknowledged. "Hey," he said. "I just wanted to," he stopped, started again. "The Wi-Fi thing and the door thing. That was, I want you to know that wasn't my idea." I looked at him. "Okay." I told her it was a bad idea. I told her both times. He rubbed the back of his neck. She has a strong personality. I don't always." He stopped again. "Greg," I said, "why are you telling me this?" He looked at the floor. "Because Diane called Brenda today, and apparently our family can't stay here past tomorrow night, and Brenda is saying it's your fault, and I know it's not your fault, and he exhaled. "I'm sorry, that's all. I'm sorry." I considered him for a moment. Greg in isolation was probably a reasonably ordinary person who had at some point made a series of small decisions that had compounded into marrying someone who submitted high-resolution photos of her child's urine to his elementary school teacher. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that. For what it's worth, the issue isn't with you." He nodded, started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "She's going to try something else," he said quietly. "With the group chat tonight, probably. She's been on her phone all afternoon." He went back inside. I texted Grandma Evelyn. "Stay close to your phone." She replied, "Already am. Also made more cookies. Come get some." Brenda's move came at 8:15 p.m. She posted a 3-paragraph message in the building group claiming she had been systematically targeted by a coordinated harassment campaign organized by residents of the 9th floor. She used the phrase hostile living environment twice and emotional distress once. She said she had documented everything and would be providing it to both building management and her legal representation. She said she was a mother, a wife, and a member of this community who deserved to feel safe in her own home. She ended with, "I came to this building in good faith, with community spirit, hoping to build real neighborly connections. Instead, I have been met with cruelty, pettiness, and what I can only describe as coordinated bullying. I hope those responsible can reflect on what kind of people they want to be." It was technically very well written. She was not as stupid as she had seemed at 10 p.m. 2 nights ago. She had framed herself as the victim early, established emotional stakes, and invoked the language of community, the same language she had used in her very first message when she had told us she expected us to share our internet connection. I read it twice. Then I opened my documentation folder, copied the link to the time-stamped camera footage of Braxton Hunter removing my welcome mat, pasted it into the group chat with a single line. "Happy to share what I've documented as well." Starting here, Maya posted her incident log as a PDF. The man from 10A posted a screenshot of the parking spot voice note Brenda had sent him, which he had apparently been saving since the day it arrived. And Grandma Evelyn last posted only this. Brenda, sweetheart, you mentioned community spirit. We've been thinking about that, too. We'll see you tomorrow. I stared at that message for a long moment. I hadn't been part of planning whatever tomorrow meant. Neither had Maya. Grandma Evelyn had been on the phone for 40 minutes earlier that evening, and I hadn't asked with whom. I walked to the kitchen doorway. She was at the counter, adding something to her notepad. Perfectly calm. Grandma, I said, what's happening tomorrow? She looked up. There was something in her expression that I recognized from childhood. The look she got when she had already won something and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. Diane's coming back, she said. And she's bringing someone. Who? She kept her pen. The regional director. I stared at her. How did I called her this afternoon? Grandma Evelyn said simply. We had a very nice conversation. She also grew up in Chicago. She picked up her tea, took a sip, and went back to her notepad. Outside in the hallway, 9A was completely silent. For the first time since Brenda had moved in, the 9th floor felt like ours again. Diane arrived at 10 a.m. with a woman named Carol, who was the regional director and had the composed, unhurried energy of someone who had seen every variation of this situation and was no longer surprised by any of them. They knocked on 9A first. Maya and I watched from my slightly open door. Grandma Evelyn seated calmly at my kitchen table with her tea, close enough to hear everything. Brenda answered in a silk blouse, clearly prepared. She had dressed for this. She smiled the way she smiled when she thought she was about to take control of a room. Good morning, Carol said. I'm Carol, Regional Director for the Property Management Group. I've reviewed the documentation submitted this week, and I'd like to go over a few things with you directly. I'm so glad you're here, Brenda said, warmth dialed to maximum. Because I have documentation of my own, and I think you'll find that the real issue here is how I've been treated since we arrived. Carol nodded pleasantly. We'll get to that. May we come in? They went inside. The door closed. For 12 minutes, the hallway was quiet. Then it opened again, and Carol's voice carried clearly into the corridor. The occupancy clause is not negotiable. Any guest staying beyond 72 hours must be registered in writing. Unregistered occupants who remain after tomorrow will result in a formal lease violation notice. Brenda's voice from inside their family. This is discrimination against Section 7.2 applies to all tenants equally. Carol said, I'll email you the relevant pages this afternoon. They stepped back into the hallway. Carol knocked on my door next. I opened it fully. Grandma Evelyn stood up from the kitchen table and came to stand beside me, tea in hand, 5 feet 1 inch and 98 pounds, of absolute composure. Carol looked at her, then at me. Something shifted slightly in her expression. Not unprofessional, just human. You must be the grandmother, she said. Evelyn, Grandma said. We spoke on the phone. We did. Carol actually smiled. Thank you for the context you provided. It was helpful. I had not known about that phone call. I found out later that Grandma Evelyn had given Carol the full picture, the previous building, the HOA fees, the pattern Kelly, the teacher, had described all of it laid out in the same clear, factual way she'd organized everything else. She had framed it not as a complaint, but as context, background information that might help management understand what they were working with. Carol had found it very useful indeed. The relatives left that afternoon. I watched from my window as a minivan was loaded up in the parking lot below. Bags, a folding cot, a box that clinked. Greg carried most of it. Brenda stood by the entrance with her arms crossed on her phone, not helping. Maya texted from work. They're really gone. Pulling out of the lot right now, I sent back. A string of emojis came through that I won't reproduce in full, but accurately captured her feelings in the building group chat. The 7th floor resident who had been asked for the extension cord at 11:30 p.m. posted, "Notice the van leaving. Nice afternoon, everyone." 14 people liked it. Grandma Evelyn added a small sun emoji. Brenda did not post anything. Greg knocked on my door again that evening. He looked different from the night before, not lighter exactly, but settled like someone who had made a decision and was no longer fighting it internally. "We're going to look for a different place," he said. "I think it's better for everyone." I didn't perform surprise. "I think that's probably right." He nodded, stood there for a second. For what it's worth, and I know it's not worth much at this point, I want you to know Braxton's not a bad kid. He's just been taught some things that aren't going to serve him. He exhaled. I'm working on it. I looked at him and thought about the hot dog on the carpet. The fuzzy hot dog that Brenda had retrieved, blown on twice, and pressed back into her son's mouth without a second thought. I thought about the messages to the teacher about a little boy being raised to believe that the world was a resource, that people around him existed to accommodate his needs, that wanting something was the same as deserving it. I hope it goes well, I said, and I meant it. He thanked me and went back inside. Grandma Evelyn left 2 days later. I carried her suitcase to the taxi. She held the casserole dish. On the way down in the elevator, she was quiet in the satisfied way she got after a good meal or a finished crossword. You didn't really need me, she said. As we reached the lobby, I absolutely needed you. You had the documentation. You had Maya. You had the camera footage of that child stealing your mat. She adjusted the casserole dish under her arm. You had everything. You just needed someone to show you how to use it all at once instead of one piece at a time. I thought about that, about how I had been responding to Brenda move by move. The police, the jump scare, the taped-up lease clause, the building management email. Each one correct, none of them enough on their own. It had taken Grandma Evelyn about 45 minutes and a plate of cookies to understand what I had missed. That isolated reactions give the other person time to adjust. That the goal wasn't to win each exchange. It was to make all the exchanges happen simultaneously, so there was nothing left to adjust to. Thank you, I said. She patted my hand, got in the taxi, rolled down the window. Send me a message when they move out. They moved out 5 weeks later. I sent her a photo of the empty parking space. She replied, good. Now go live in peace. The 9th floor has been quiet since then. Maya and I have coffee on Saturday mornings when her schedule allows. The man from 10A waves when we pass in the garage. The woman from 8D left a small plant outside my door with a note that said simply, thank you for saying something. I think about Brenda sometimes, about the version of events she tells herself. The one where she was the victim, where the building turned against her, where she was simply trying to build community and was met with cruelty. I think she probably tells that story with genuine conviction. People like Brenda usually do. The entitlement is so total that it becomes invisible to the person carrying it. They can't see it as entitlement because from the inside it just feels like knowing what they deserve. That's the thing no one warns you about. The people who take the most are often completely sincere. They're not lying when they talk about community spirit or mutual support. They believe it. They just believe it in a direction that only flows one way. What I learned is this. Documentation is kindness. Not to them, to yourself, and to the next person they try this on. Every timestamp, every screenshot, every politely worded email is a fact that exists outside of anyone's feelings about it. Feelings can be argued with. Facts just sit there very calmly being true. And if you're lucky, if you're very lucky, you'll have a 75-year-old woman in your corner who shows up with a casserole dish and understands better than anyone that the people who announce what they're owed have already told you everything you need to know about how to beat them. You just have to be paying attention.